So, welcome everyone to our Talkroom series of podcasts, Being Your Best Self. And for those that haven't seen any of our previous podcasts, I'd like to introduce my co-presenter, Wendy. Wendy is a highly experienced CBT psychotherapist and has worked in the field of mental health and well-being for 35 years plus now, Wendy.
Thank you very much, Ian. And for those who don't know you, Ian is a senior accredited member of the National Counselling Society and the founder of Hope Therapy and Counselling Services, which is a counselling practice that operates throughout England.
Thank you, Wendy. So these podcasts look at the question of how to be your best self. We do that by looking at the question of mental health and well-being, but we also try to make them relevant to the times we live in. And today we're going to be talking about how to use behavioural activation to help with depression. And Wendy, if you would tell us a little bit more about what that is and what depression is.
Yep, certainly, Ian. So depression, it's a very common mental health problem, characterized by persistent feelings of sadness, hopelessness, and a lack of interest or pleasure in activities that we once found enjoyable. It can also lead to a range of physical and emotional symptoms, such as changes in appetite and sleep patterns, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and very often thoughts of worthlessness or even thoughts of death. Depression can significantly impact a person's ability to function in daily life and also to maintain healthy relationships. Depression is quite a complex mental health problem, and its causes are multifaceted and can vary very much from person to person. There's also really many causes of depression. For example, if you've experienced a trauma or a form of significant loss, such as redundancy or even bereavement, or even chronic stress, which leads to higher levels of cortisol, which impact on our health and well-being and therefore can cause more depression.
So it seems like depression has a range of symptoms, such as low mood, but also psychological and physical symptoms as well.
Mm. Yes, Ian, you're very right. If you are depressed, you can have quite strong reactions to things. So, for example, you can either feel really lethargic or you can feel agitated and can't settle. Typical classical thoughts connected to depression are, for example, what's the point? Or I'm worthless, or I'm useless. Or another one is, why do bad things always happen to me? However, the problem is, due to the symptoms such as lethargy, this can lead to a vicious cycle. So the more that you don't do things as you feel so tired and you lack motivation, then you tend to do less. But then this can lead to you thinking more negatively about your life and then how badly you feel, which therefore increases the symptoms of depression.
So I think you're describing that when you start to feel low, you can withdraw, you can isolate yourself, which can lead to further problems, such as not engaging in things that you enjoy and having more time to think, which tends to focus on negative aspects of our life. Is that right? I understood that.
Yeah, very much, Ian. Yeah, that's definitely correct. So in cognitive behavior therapy, this vicious cycle is where your thinking and therefore your behavior as a result of your thinking tends to lead to more problems. So in depression, as you're doing less, you are right. You then tend to focus more about what is wrong with your life. And focusing on negative thoughts, this is a process called rumination.
So that's how we understand what depression is and the symptoms that we might associate with depression. So do you have any tips on how to reduce those sorts of distressing symptoms that you're
Mm.
describing?
Mm. Yes, a good question, and certainly, Ian. So the first step is called behavioural activation, that is used in cognitive behavioural therapy, which is CBT for short. And what this means is that often we need to start to change our behaviour first. And the reason for this, and this is based on substantial research, because our minds can become so entrenched in the depression that trying to simply challenge negative thoughts tends to be not to work. It's just too overwhelming for the individual. So this is why it's called behavior activation, as we start with trying to instigate behavioral change.
That's fascinating. So, can you give us some ideas on how we might go about putting that idea of behavioural activation into practice?
Yes, certainly, Ian. And I like the model, which is called the ACE model. And that stands for A stands for achievement, C stands for connection, and E stands for enjoyment. So, in a nutshell, you then try to re engage in activities that you used to give you a feeling of achievement or help you to feel connected to people, to help with the common feelings of isolation that often happen with depression. Then the E is enjoyment, activities you enjoy. Now, this sounds fine in theory, but in practice, this is much harder to do. But if it's okay, and I'd just like to give you a little bit more tips on
Please.
how to
Yeah,
do this.
absolutely.
Okay. So one thing you can do is simply just start making a list of activities, hobbies, and interests that you have either enjoyed in the past or maybe have always wanted to do but have never prioritized or had the time. Now, a lot of these things may not be possible to do for all kinds of reasons, but at least you're stimulating your brain again to think about things, to problem solve, think of solutions. So that's one thing that you can do. The second tip is when you decide on some activities that you're interested in developing, it's really important to start with very small, easier to achieve steps. So, for example, if you go about trying to organize a birthday party for someone, that takes a lot of effort, energy, and organization skills, which could be so much harder if the person's feeling depressed. Whereas keeping it very simple, like going for a coffee in a local coffee shop with a friend or family member, is just much easier to do and organize. Um, but also by starting to re-engage in activities. This can give you a sense of achievement. Sense of achievement increases your endorphins, which gives you a natural feel-good feeling. So if you keep repeating these activities and then you feel a sense of achievement, again, it naturally makes you feel better and good. And so the idea is this will carry on. Another tip is try to make things a routine. And the benefit of this is so that the activities start to become more of a habit. Simply, for example, set the intention of getting up at the same time each day. Just builds a routine so that you start doing it, becomes a habit, and you don't even have to think about it anymore. It just becomes automatic. And another tip is it can be really helpful to keep a mood diary. And what this entails is to write down the activities and how you feel after you've done them. Do you feel any better? Does it make any difference? Do you feel worse? But actually notice the ones that actually help you to feel better. And therefore, the theory is that you'll do more of those and that will increase your endorphins. Now, with depression, often you don't always feel better straight away. It can take time. So it's really important to remember that the goal is to start to feel more active first, to actually achieve the goal, do the activity, and then after a while, it should help you to feel better, but not necessarily at the start.
Yeah, that's really helpful, really interesting. But it still feels like quite a challenge. I wonder if there are any other tips, any other suggestions that you have about how we can go about working with this.
Yes, Ian. It is really important to talk about these things because depression is so all-consuming, and people do feel so helpless and hopeless. And I want to talk a little bit more about the research done with neuroscience. And one of the things it says, it's better to start something, however small, rather than wait until you feel like doing something. So what happens a lot of the times, people often wait for motivation or inspiration, but nothing happens. So it works the other way round. Start something, and actually by starting it, this helps you to motivate yourself. And also, research suggests that when you start something, your brain naturally wants to complete it. So even if you start something for 5 minutes, say, I'm going to do this activity, I'm going to go for a walk for 5 minutes, say 5 minutes. Once you actually start walking, you're more likely to want to continue. Another piece from neuroscience suggests that our brain responds best to novelty. So, what is good here is trying to go out and try something new or a novelty in an interest that you have, because this also helps to stimulate your brain and again creates more feel good chemicals such as endorphins. Another point that neuroscience suggests that your brain gets stimulated by doing activity. So when you're depressed and you're just sitting there, you're not doing anything, again, you tend to shut down. As soon as you start walking or doing things, this actually helps to rewire the brain. And the rewiring process also helps to create feel-good chemicals. But what can happen is when people are really, really depressed, it can be really hard even to get out of bed. And if this is the case, then it's really important to have even more smaller, achievable goals. So simply by the act of getting out of bed and going downstairs, that may be all the person can start with. And the problem is that person who is already telling themselves that they are useless see this very small step as negative. So, for example, just by getting out of bed and going downstairs, they say, well, that's really pathetic. Is that all I can do today? I'm just so useless. It's such a small step. So it's really important to see every step, however small, as an achievement. So, for example, if you've broken your leg, you don't expect yourself to run a marathon, but actually creating a small step, such as walking, can be quite an achievement if you've broken your leg. And this is the case when you're actually doing behavioural activation. And then going back to the ACE model, the ACE, so the C stands for closeness. And this is also really important because people with depression often isolate themselves, which causes more problems. And then you can lose your confidence and your skills in being with people. So it's really important to increase more activities where you feel connected to people. Again, however small is important. So even if it's a simple thing like chatting to a family member 5 minutes before going to work, you're actually keeping up those connections. So there's a few more tips for you.
That's really helpful. Lots of really helpful information in there. Thank you, Wendy. So that's the behavioural aspect. But what about thoughts in depression? I mean, they can be hugely distressing. Can you say a little bit about those?
Yes, certainly. Obviously, negative thoughts are part of the problem with depression. And they're also very negative, global, like I'll never feel any better. There's no hope for me in the future. So one practice which is really, really good and proven to work very well with depression is just focusing and staying in the present moment and trying to stay with the activity you're doing. So a lot of research in the effective of mindfulness in daily activities. So what that means is focusing on simple tasks, simply as having a coffee or a shower, and then go through your sensory experiences. What you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you feel, and in certain cases, like drinking a cup of coffee, what you taste. With mindfulness, it's important to accept that your mind will wander, and that's what minds do. And then all you need to do is just gently bring it back to the activity. And another favorite of mine in dealing with depression is a therapy called acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT for short. And one aspect of ACT is to really focus on the meaning of the activity, for example, rather than just say to yourself, I'm going to go for a walk. Focus on the meaning behind the walk. Maybe the meaning behind the walk is to help you to get fitter, and knowing that this increases endorphins. So by writing this down or noting this can help with motivation and a sense of fulfillment, that you are starting to build more meaning back into your life. And that again can help to lift your mood.
Lots and lots of really interesting information in there, lots of practical tips. So again, thank you so much for that, Wendy. I guess I just wonder, anything else?
Yeah, so I think another really important thing is the research suggests that routine is important. I've already mentioned that, but also a bedtime routine can help. So it's quite important to try to retrain your brain to go to your bed at the same time each day, and then to focus on relaxation to help you to get a good night's sleep. As a problem with depression is you often feel either exhausted or you can't sleep at all. These are really common problems. And just simply helping your body to get into that bedtime routine helps to improve your sleep. And then you're more likely to wake up, feel more energetic, and have more energy to re-engage in activities. And what is sort of quite challenging is we're all individuals, we're all different. So it's really important to remember that we may need to try several things to work out what really helps us to feel better and to lift our mood. So what works for us as individuals.
Yeah, really, really useful ideas there, really useful tips. So thank you so much. So if anybody wants to find out more, I mean, you've given a huge amount there, but if people want to find out more, what do they need to do? How can they go about finding out?
Yes, certainly. So if anybody's interested in dealing with their problems of depression, or they know a loved one who is having problems, you can go to my website, wendycastellino.com, for more details. And you can just Google my name or go to my website and leave your details there, and I can give you a call and we can have an informal conversation to see whether I can help you. And what about you? What about your details, Ian?
Yeah, so Hopeful Minds, Hope Therapy has a website, hopefulminds.co.uk. So that's www.hopefulminds.co.uk. We have all sorts of resources on the website. They're absolutely free of charge. So we have blogs on there. We have links to the podcasts that we do. We have all sorts of infographics on there about a whole variety of subjects, including depression. But we have a whole team of counsellors and therapists who are available to work with people as well. So people are very, very welcome just to get in touch with us as well. Really, just for me to thank you, Wendy, for talking about this really, really important subject, depression, and giving us so many really interesting ideas about how we can go about supporting ourselves or supporting loved ones which may be struggling in this way. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Ian, as well. And thank you for all our listeners. And we'll be back with another podcast soon to deal with issues of mental health and well-being. So thank you, everyone, from me. And thank you, Ian.
Thank you.